Here we go. I'd like to announce that a quorum is present. The meeting is duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time now is 12:03 p.m. We ask that all those in attendance conduct themselves respectfully at all times during this meeting. Any outbursts or disruptive behaviors may result in your removal from today's board workshop. The following board members are in attendance: Tracy Miller, Allison Lasan, Catherine Sells, Dr. Bunny Bonner, Christy Hassett, Jenny Prosnick. Board member Sheila Taylor is unable to attend today's workshop. I have asked board member Allison Lasan to lead us in prayer.
Dear Lord, please be with us today as we make decisions about the future of the district. Please give us wisdom. Please also be with all of our staff and students as they round out the end of the school year. Please help them stick with it and know that the end is near and that they have a wonderful, wonderful summer ahead of them. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Lasan. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. Persons desiring to address the Board of Trustees must fill out speaker's cards. In accordance with district policy, only speaker cards addressing items on today's agenda will be acknowledged. No presentation shall exceed 3 minutes. The board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included on the agenda. For each speaker will receive a written follow-up from the district in the next 3 business days. The board and district administration values the feedback shared during this time of the meeting, and we are grateful for the continued partnership between LISD and families and communities we serve. For each speaker, please state your name and address. There are no speakers. Discussion items, Dr. Rapp, review of 2021-2022 budget.
Thank you, President Miller. So we've got a great presentation for you today for discussion about where things are standing with the budget and to bring back information that was discussed previously and to provide you some important updates about that information. We've broken the presentation up into 2 segments, so I'm going to turn it over first to Paige, and then when she's done with some of the budget pieces, we'll take a pause, have any discussion that's needed, and then we'll move on to some updates from Human Resources and bringing back some ideas that we promised we would continue to bring back as we brought these forward. And Ms. Cobb will help us with that today. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Paige first.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rapp, President Miller, members of the board. Please note that all numbers are preliminary, tentative, and subject to change. I just got off the phone with Denton County just a few minutes ago, and this tax situation, it's going to be a long summer. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today. So we are going to review our 2022 budget. I do want to say that, TEA did grant us that attendance adjustment, just like all of the districts in the state of Texas. It was actually coming in as a operational minutes adjustment, but it wasn't that at all. They had to put it as that because statutorily that's what the commissioner had the authority to do. All it was an attendance adjustment. It brought us back to level set us for pre-pandemic of the first 4-6 weeks in the 1920 school year, and we were able to apply that to those first 4-6 weeks. And if we hold strong for our attendance in the 6 weeks, we will have an attendance rate projection of 96%, and an ADA. The ADA will be applied and settle up. And as we know, anytime we increase ADA, that recapture payment will go down. So that's good news for us. Update on the 21-22 budget. This is a little bit different from the slide that you saw at the board meeting on Tuesday evening. I'm very, very conservative always with revenue projections coming in, and when I looked at some of the did some analysis on the local revenue other than taxes, I just wanted to be as conservative as possible. I think that it will pick up a little bit, but coming new to it, I'm not going to overstate anything. So a little bit larger of a projected deficit right now, could possibly come down for this year, the fiscal year 22. And again, I'll remind you for fiscal year 23, as we make this forecast, these numbers are very, very early, being in May. Being in a very property wealthy district that is subject to recapture, our local revenue makes up 86% of the budget currently right now, state revenue at 12%, and federal revenue at 2%. Our local revenue, we base it on assumptions of our ADA, increase in our property values. We have received our April estimates. And the one good thing about Denton County is we get updates every Friday. And today's updates the values were higher than they were last week. So that tells you about all of the moving parts that are going on at Denton County. We'll talk a little bit about the homestead exemption and the 65 and older exemption that passed. Those do not affect the M&O side, but as we get in June, when we get into the INS debt service budget, any future debt that we issue, those will affect, we will not be able to collect the taxes on that. But as of this meeting, I am projecting an M&O tax rate of 90 cents with the Tier 1 compressed rate that TEA sets right around a little over 85 cents. I think that we will probably have to adjust up on the values, and that will further compress that. The lowest that it can go is 80 cents this year on that cap. So I just added an agenda item for June 3rd. I'm going to give you a tax update every time we come together because I think there are going to be a lot of moving parts to this. But we'll talk a little bit about that on a future slide. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to say is, when they release those certified values in July, we have to turn in the net taxable to TEA, and that sets our tax rate. And so that determines what our collections are, so we have to come in pretty much right on that. So it'll, we don't have any control over that. Our Tier 2 golden pennies, we have 5. We'll always have those, and they are, of course, more valuable based on the way the formula is. Our other local revenue that we've really taken a hard look at, it's about $13 million for all of those other local revenue line items. Tuition, interest, rent, athletics, miscellaneous, those are there. And we'll see those at budget time too. This slide just shows, I'd like to point out that in the 2021 and the 21-22, for our funding purposes, we are using an adjustment, a hold harmless adjustment in fiscal year 21, and in fiscal year 22 an attendance adjustment. So you can see our actuals there, and that's really kind of what we look at when we project if we're not going to have any sort of adjustment. Here, right now, we're predicting 7% growth. I am thinking that is going to go north. I don't know how far north at this time. Right now, those taxable values are sitting at about 17%. And that's on the lower end of Denton County, actually. We've got some of our districts that are sitting at 26, 27% in value growth, which is unheard of, that we are in some strange times. I like this slide a little bit better because it's showing that the values are going up and then the percentage increase down below. Just an easier visual for me. Again, and for the $15K homestead exemption that increased that to $40K, there won't be any impact to our maintenance and operations budget, but we'll get into that a little later in the summer when we're talking about debt service. Same thing on the over 65 levy that passed in the proposition in the last election. When we get to our state revenue, our foundation school program will decrease due to estimated higher property values. We did project some enrollment increases in CTE and special education. The available school fund is set, that's set at per capita for all school districts based on the prior year. That is set to increase just a little bit, and then our TRS on behalf. But what I want to say about this 12% of the state revenue that we get, 6% of that is TRS on behalf, which is nothing. It comes in and it goes out. We hold that money for the state to be able to pay out for the teachers, so it's really kind of a wash. The other 6% is lower. The amount that we receive is lower than the recapture payment that we pay out. So essentially, and I've don't remember who said that, but I've listened to a lot of y'all's recordings before I came here. Someone said, it's really no state aid for us. You said that, Mr. Okay. So to your point, I mean, yes, it's coming in on the books, but it's going right back out and settle up when we have to send in that recapture payment. On the federal side, one thing that we didn't talk about, I don't think in the last, we do have some increases in indirect costs right now, and that is simply because of the ESSER 3 money that is coming into the district and that we are expending. So that's something that's a little out of the ordinary. Don't see much change in SHARs. Don't see much change in impact aid, but over the past couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to go in, and we're really going to start tracking that out there too, and see if we can maximize and leverage, any additional funding in those areas, because we're trying to do everything we can to be able to do that. Very small portion of our budget, but still wanted to bring that to your attention. On the expenditure side, what I'll say about the recapture payment, and as you know, as those property values creep up, we know that will increase. I expect that probably to increase before we get to August. We have our payroll expenses, and the big concern right now, as far as all of the price increases across the board, we're real worried about fuel. And I don't know that this is a realistic estimate on the increase in fuel prices. We'll have to watch that and bring it back to you this in June to see if there needs to be an increase there, because that both diesel and regular fuel is a real concern right now, and I'm sure you realize that too. So this is kind of where we're landing right now, and Melissa will have a slide in a little bit that shows that we have about $15 million increase for the raises that were given in April. We are starting right there about a $15 million deficit. We're going to be able to apply about $7 million in ESSER, and that's our current estimate for our forecast for fiscal year 23. And you can see that compared to the actual and the actual in fiscal year 21 as by audit, and are adopted in fiscal year 22, which we know we have a projection. You've seen that projection for that. The only other thing I wanted to add today is kind of an initial step to go out there, and I haven't had a whole lot of conversations about how we do this yet, but I mean it will be a big part of how we move forward. But on our campus budget allocations, I just want to draw your attention to all of the things that are budgeted by other LISD departments that the campuses don't have control over. Of course, we do our salaries and benefits in the budgeting department. Some of our athletic expenditures are allocated by the athletics department. We have contracts for food services and custodial supplies and utilities. Technology helps us out with the telephones, and then our maintenance needs, facilities department will do that. And so that kind of lines out some things that the campus don't have discretion over, but when we do give them their budgets, it's based on a per pupil campus allocation, and you can see those allocations there for the 22-23 school year. Additional allocations for special population counts are based on the previous fall's enrollment, and those are in special education, bilingual ESL, economically disadvantaged, and student population mobility. So we make adjustments accordingly to allocate to the campuses. What we originally give to the campuses in their original budget is 85% of the total allocation, and then when fall PEIMS comes, and that should actually say fall PEIMS 22, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Fall PEIMS 2022, we get actual enrollment and special population counts, and then we reconcile, and in December, the campuses will receive a settle-up based on their fall counts. So if their enrollment does not hit what we thought it was going to hit, we would settle up going lower, but if they, of course, go over that, we would give them a higher amount. So that's just kind of a preliminary discussion based on our campus allocations. And I'll stop there for any questions.
Okay, let's, this is not our first budget session as a board, so let's just go around the room. Thank you for the presentation, by the way.
Yes.
Like the format and the structure and kind of where we're at as a pause. So thank you for that. Christy, do you want to start first?
Thank you for the presentation. For the tax rate, compressed rate, you said the lowest the TEA will set it is possibly 80 cents?
A little over 80 cents, yes. They have to stay within 10% of the highest and the lowest, so they really can't go.
So that's 5 cents even lower than.
It is. That's the lowest that it could possibly go. If you go lower than that, you don't get the full benefit of the state funding. So
Right. That's
so it is low.
Yeah. And then you said in July, we have to send our net taxable values?
Yes, we submit they give you a 2-week window, TEA does, from the July 25th certified values. And in the certified values, you're having to submit your net taxable, not your freeze where you're doing your collections or anything like that, but your net taxable, because that'll be what ends up being your T2 value. And so we turn that in, and they turn it around very quickly, and they set our MCR for us.
That's tier 2 is our net taxable?
Tier 1, MCR, that the maximum compressed rate. And then we get our additional golden pennies. Those are not touched, the 5 pennies.
And we have to have that by July. How close are we going to be to, percentage-wise, of resolving?
Well, what I've done, and I've talked with Denton County, and I've done some comparables as far as the levy goes in comparing July to all the way to October. There's been little change over the past, but I'm nervous about that, and that's why I want it. And Little Elm is coming with me, and Lake Dallas, we're all kind of banding together to say, okay, where are we going to be from July to October, because are they going to be able to process all these protests? So that's a real concern of mine. In the past, I have not seen that at all. We looked at and even got the tax office on the phone, and there has been little change from July to October in the past, for the past 5 years of trends. But I'm very concerned about that because of the number of properties under protest.
Okay, I think that's something that we need to address either with Commissioner Morath and or legislators. They heard this timeline as being an issue when they passed HB3, but we need to tell them we weren't joking, it's an issue. So we just need to advocate better for ourselves on that one. One more question, last one. How long have they given you a ballpark time frame as to how long we'll get the hold harmless?
For
the property?
For the maintenance and operation, well, as long as this formula is in place. But, it's an advocacy issue for sure. With this formula in place, we will get the hold harmless for that, because they can't touch on the M&O side. It's just debt issued after September 1, 2021.
Okay, the state typically just doesn't.
I know.
Okay. That's all, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess the only thing I really had is just you were talking about the taxable values. So July 25th is the day that they're supposed to have all the certified values to TEA?
No, they have to turn them around to us.
Okay, to us. Okay.
Yes.
So has Denton County given you any sort of numbers of how many protests there are?
41% in Denton
41%.
County on residential are under protest
I'm
right
one
now.
of those.
Yeah.
But you did?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I got mine a month ago. Wow.
I don't know what this 10% thing is. I'm going to protest, but
And they've sent them out, and they talked to us about this on Tuesday. At our luncheon, they bought us lunch and then gave us all the bad news. We bought us lunch. We pay for that anyway. So they have done it in cycles. Because they don't have the manpower or the phone power to handle the volume of calls and walk-ins.
Why did they say that the appraisals were sent out late? Did they say?
Because they're doing them, by statute, they have up until a certain point, and they've never had to do that before, but it's because to handle the volume of, because they know the protests are coming. Does that make sense?
Wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That isn't, well, this is an issue. I mean, this is bad. This is not good. That's all I really had. That has nothing to do with you, but.
Thank you, Allison. Else?
A lot of my questions have been answered. I think I'm most concerned about ad. And I don't remember this being an issue. Well, I mean, in the past, but I'm talking, in the past it hasn't been, but I was going to say, hasn't been an issue except for the last few years. That was my whole statement. And so I think that warrants not only discussions with the ad, but also I love what you're doing in combining the power of our districts here in the area. But we need change. Change either in the process or else other factors. And so I think that is my biggest concern is I'm not confident of what they're going to give us on July the 25th. And I'll leave it at that right now.
In a sense, theme. Mine is more about the fact that DCAD did not certify rolls until September 2 years ago. And I want to know what the penalty is with TEA if we don't have certified rolls. I want to know what that looks like. I also would like to, on your assumptions for fiscal year 23, I guess when we look at fuel and utilities, that certainly comes under transportation. That is certainly an unfunded mandate, in my opinion. I think I'd really like to see what that delta is with what we actually have to spend out of what we collect to what the state gives us for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think it would be very eye-opening, especially since it hasn't changed since 1981, if I'm correct.
They just moved to linear. It's the same.
Yeah.
We're getting the same amount.
Same
Yes.
amount. So those are my big concerns, along with my fellow trustees on those things.
Thanks, Ms. President. Dr. Bonner.
Got a few questions, Paige. First off, just a quick number. Where are we on fund balance right now? 160-ish?
170. So
170. Okay.
A hit for
Thank you.
10 would be, yeah.
Yeah. And on slide 4, we had a projected deficit of $26 million at the beginning of the year, almost 27, and currently it's down to 17. Of course, we have some ESSER money. I like the downward trajectory. Do you anticipate that continuing through the end of the fiscal year?
I think so. I think we could get a little, I don't think we're going to have anything to the positive.
No.
But like I said, I hadn't gotten a chance to get to those other local revenue sources, and I felt like, and the accountants, we just kind of like did a monthly amount, and I really wanted to go back and look 5 years of what we actually collected. And after doing that, I want to be real conservative.
Okay. I'm not trying to pin you down.
No.
I know you and Mr. Youngs and that ilk don't like to project numbers like that.
Well, I'm always going to be real conservative.
But I like
yeah.
that the arrow's pointing down.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Okay. Also, I agree with Catherine that very wise, and I appreciate you banding together with Little Elm and the other districts you mentioned. There's strength in numbers, and if everybody's having the same issue. On the July taxable values that are submitted to the state in July, in the event that those come in stronger later, or to our betterment, is there any appeal to that? What's that look like?
There's really not. And we're kind of in uncharted territory here if that were to happen. I mean, we haven't seen that in the past, that they have changed significantly. So, no, I mean, when they do a preliminary tax rate, that is not, you can, but we're not, the appeal is due before October. I mean, you have to do it within 2 weeks of them doing the preliminary. So
Right.
you just, yes, you can appeal.
Okay,
But
good.
it's not all the way out to when they send the state, the estimates to the taxpayer.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I'll get some more information. I'll
And-
put some information in a board update about
Yeah,
that.
that'd be
That's
great.
a really good point.
That'd be great. And then I raised my hand earlier because I did ask Mr. Youngs a few weeks back about, and I didn't anticipate the answer coming so clear. But, I asked Mark, hey, so is there ever an instance when recapture washes over the amount of state aid? And I'll be darned if my old Canton High School math is correct. Let me get back to that number. Look at that. We are $69.6 million from the state, if my 12% figures are correct on next year, and our recapture is 63.1. You back out that 6%, or you back out
For
the
TRS
TRS,
on behalf.
$6 million, and we're right there.
Absolutely.
That is deplorable.
Yeah.
That's no state aid at all. So I'm going to make sure that's on the record for people asking us about, how we're spending our money and why our tax rate is what it is.
Well, and it's
because
also
the state's not funding us at all.
No, and it also when they see that big number for the state, I mean, 34 million this year was TRS on behalf. We have a huge payroll, and I mean
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
a holding tank for us, for the state, for us to for our employees.
Which I know we appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's not the issue. The issue is the level of state funding
Right.
that is immaterial relative to our recapture. So that's very disconcerting to me as a board member, but also as a taxpayer. We ought not display that as the state giving 12%. We ought to just call it what it is. So I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
I do have one follow-up really quick with the advocacy idea of trying to make sure that everybody understands. So if we have a taxable value in July, but it increases in, no, that means it would be more state aid. So we'd have more state aid actually if our values don't increase. Okay, never mind. Right?
Right.
Yes. Okay, never mind.
Yes. It's confusing with and having to carry that recapture payment and the revenue on the books.
But if it ever gets uncrazy in property values again, then it's the reverse.
Right.
So the legislators really need to think long-term, because it's not going to continue forever and ever and ever at this rate. So they could be underwater later in a different budget situation when they don't have the money. So we need to explain that entire process. If you could write it down for us so that we have that information, and then we can pass it on to our legislators now, and the potential's long-term, even though it's not going to be any time soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I've got some micro questions that I may address with you later. Just a couple things that I want to make note of. One is, I think, to Ms. Prosnick's point, it leads to a bigger point, which is I'm not saying anything that's a surprise to anybody that may be watching this. We have had some concerns about the processes and approach with DCAD, and things like certifying the values late, other system issues, the amount of budget we had. I think we had about $4.1 million budget allocation that was going to go to them, or that they were going to keep from our tax collection, which is a material amount of money, and a lot of that was to be used for staffing in a building. I think the building was postponed, but the staffing issue will in fact affect how many people they process. And so getting your taxes, your valuations late, early on they're going to be giving it pretty much to everybody, and then those that come in late, you'll see more dispute about it. But so in doing that, though, in kind of taking on the DCAD issue, we did do that in partnership. So I do like the collaborative approach you're taking. We work strongly with leaders in the city of Lewisville and those at the table to kind of try and get somebody in there that would look at the way they're doing things. So I would expect that they're looking at things very introspectively as well from a governance perspective, and let's see what happens. But the tentativeness you see from us is because of what we've experienced from, in particular, our appraisal district. And then the other thing I'd say, and I think this is maybe where Ms. Hassett was going, but to the extent that there are things here that we can capture, one of the things we'll talk about as a board is a potential of having a candidate forum for the legislative delegation so that we can, and I think some of you have meetings about legislative discussions coming up. What are our priorities? We usually talk about those late in the year, sometimes post-election. This is our time to get some things on the table. From what you're talking about, right, or Christy, what you were mentioning, where these are real issues that if they wouldn't have effect on our budget this year, that certainly next year we would want you to have input into us influencing them starting this year so that when we get to the session, we can try and influence them. And stories make a difference, right? Particular stories around where we see these challenges. So I really don't have any other questions. Other than that, I probably will ask some later.
All right. Thank you, guys, Dr. Rapp, President Miller, and the board for allowing me to speak to you today to bring forth just some review of the compensation and the benefits that we brought forth previously, but also to provide you with some updates today. So thank you for that. We're going to start with an update to our right-size staffing adjustments. At our board meeting in April, we talked to you about right-size classroom staffing. I believe we said that we, at that time, would have 25 positions that we would potentially adjust. Related to that, we've now completed all of our campus staffing meetings, and we're going to be able to adjust 40 positions, resulting in about a $2.9 million save for that. As you know, we have right-size adjusted our permanent sub positions. We started at 137. We've reduced that by 40 to 97. That results in about a $935,000 save. Operating at 96% with a staff fill rate is what we're budgeting and operating on. And then as far as our right-size central office staffing, we're still working through that. But as we work through those positions with attrition, we are, and also realizing and looking at the central office as a whole and seeing what the needs are, we adjust those accordingly as well. So ultimately, we, in April, brought to you about a $12.6 million savings there. Right now, that would be adjusted to about a 14.3 savings. All right. Again, another thank you to you guys. You guys approved in April our staff raises, 4% to the campus instructional staff, 3% for all other staff. You also adjusted the technology compensation, the T-class interns, and then the Teachers of Tomorrow plan. So as you know, that resulted in a new deficit of 14.9. With TRS, I know you've heard this in our weekly update. What we are extremely proud to report that because they were able to find a lot of money with their COVID ESSER funds, our rates are not changing, which we are happy to report. That means with the raises that you guys approved, our employees will actually get to see their raises. They won't go towards medical premiums. I will put this caveat out there, though, with that. We all know ESSER's leaving us after next year, so we do anticipate there will be some changes with the medical premiums and all of that for next year. And this is just a review. This is a review of our plan, the HD plan. About 60% of our employees are covered under this plan, and it just is a graphic to show what I just said. You'll see there that they're the employee only. The cost is $103. The district or to them, the contribution stays the same, and then there's no adjustment to their annual and monthly salary. So. And then again, this is simply a review to what our district pays in to the medical premiums every month. You can see that we're very competitive with our surrounding districts, and I believe we're I think 14% or ranked number 14 in the DFW area for that. Mm-hmm. And then we just wanted you to look at this again. We do look at our substitute daily rates of pay. And this, again, is just where you've made the adjustments. You've known since we, over the last 2 years, we've made some adjustments within those last 2 years to pay rates. You'll see here with just a comparable table here of all our surrounding districts and what everybody pays for a certified teacher. We've placed those out there. We, again, look pretty comparable and are pretty competitive to the surrounding districts. As far as the same thing here, we just moved it from certified to the long-term sub pay rate. I know that you guys get a lot of questions about that, as we do too. So we wanted to bring forth this information to kind of show you where we are in relation to the surrounding districts, as well as the requirements. You'll see that we're at 130 per day, and that's with a person being in that position for 16 consecutive days. And we're pretty comparable. The biggest outlier here is Plano. Theirs is a 228 per day, but they have to be in the position for 21 consecutive days. And then again, just some of the pay incentives that you guys have approved that we are working through and paying out to our substitutes. The Friday incentive pay is a $10 extra pay per day. The 9-week incentive pay is that $250. They have to work 25 days within the 9 weeks. And then the retiree and former pay is $10 extra per day. And I can say that those are going well. Our Friday rates have increased, as well as our retiree and former employees. So just moving forward to just some additional compensation considerations and follow-up from our April 4th meeting. We brought to you the increasing option number 1 to increase our local leave days. We brought that to you in April. Currently, we have 3 local days. The request has been made to add 2 additional local leave days. That cost estimate is there. We've estimated it to be around $1.2 million. It's kind of hard to put a number around that because not everybody will use their days. And then we would like to propose another option, which is to provide bereavement leave days. Currently, we do not provide bereavement leave days. So we're looking at asking potentially to add 3 days of those for any kind of need related an immediate loss of a family member. Policy would have to be written around that. And so the cost is really the cost of the sub, if a sub is needed. And so we estimated that to be around $25,000. That is based on what we were able to pull this year. Currently, we don't always know when people take off for what reason, but we do have a number of 50. There were 50 employees that used their own personal leave for bereavement. So using that, we came up with a number of about $25,000. That's just an option to consider. As you recall, we brought to you the lump sum payment. We're just bringing it back again, just to see if you would like to consider that again as an option. You know that if we did the 1, it would cost us $3.3 million. Then if we did 2, it would be 6.6. So again, that's just a review. And again, another review is our Title I stipend consideration. We're bringing forth the option, the consideration for every employee to be paid a $1,000 stipend that works at a Title I campus. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rapp. She wants to talk to you about the job market update.
All right, so just an update definitely that we did not have in the last presentation, but of course the technology that you all addressed is a good example of this. So every hiring season we face various circumstances around positions that we may be having a hard time competing for. And so I just wanted to let you know this hiring season what has come up from leaders in these departments. Nurses is something that we're having a hard time competing. Of course, we'll never completely ever close the gap of what they could make in the medical field, but there's other benefits to working for a school district that you get as well. Occupational therapists, physical therapists, music therapists, and audiologists. So you kind of see the trend with licensure in that medical type range. And essentially, an example not only of the technology that you all did recently, but in 2019-20, a market adjustment was made for speech therapists and diagnosticians that year because of the difficulty hiring. When you make these kind of market adjustments, if we were to do something like that, for that group that's in that paragraph, you're looking at probably around $250,000 to $300,000 to address those staff members and make their pay a little bit more competitive. And these are positions that, you just have a hard time competing for with other districts. I'm not saying to do that necessarily, but I did want to make that part of the conversation, that we are really taking a hard look at those positions, and do we need to build something like that into the budget. And then again, just as Melissa summed up, thank you, Melissa. Essentially, you just asked at the last time that we had the budget conversation, both in March and April, that we bring back before you any of these considerations, so you all could discuss them again as a group. And the bereavement leave, again, that is a new one to add to the local leave. It's been a question that we faced, and so we're not saying, about any of these things that we think absolutely do you have to do these things. We just thought a workshop's a great time for you, again, as a group, to have discussion around these ideas. And anything that you would choose to add, of course, adds to our red bag dollar amount. And then our next steps, really, of course, we are working hard to finalize that FTE count and all of the work that happens between HR and the budget office to build that budget in June and get ready for you all with that. And we'll provide more information about those final FTE counts at that time. Of course, we've got some debt service planning conversations to happen in June, as we have alluded to in the past. Paige will continue to adjust revenue calculations for fiscal year 23 based on that DCAT information. We'll continue to study these market adjustments, and I'll keep you updated through the board notes about what we're finding in terms of competitive pay for those groups of people. And then we will finish the unfunded mandate calculations, and we'll reflect that in those budget graphs, the budget bars, how much of the expenditures forecast is really in unfunded mandates. We need a little bit more homework time on those items, and y'all have even called out one here today that we need to be sure and have on there. So with that, that's all of our pieces, and that should leave a good amount of time for discussion around these ideas. Thank you so much.
First off, thank you for all the work in bringing that back. I'm just wondering on bereavement leave, I think that's incredibly important to bring, as that's the worst time people need to be worried about leave. I just wonder, and $25,000 is wholly reasonable for what you're projecting. I just wonder if we've considered attaching that, and the sick leave bank board would have to do it, attaching that to sick leave bank, because that's the best investment you can get as an employee for your leave. One day gets you $25,
right, and
rolling bereavement into that. Has there been any discussion there?
There is not, but we certainly can consider that. Absolutely.
That might be a good use, because that's a great opportunity for employees. So anyway.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, that's my only thought.
A great
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate bereavement. I've been asking for a few years if we could do something along these lines, and so I appreciate you bringing it to us. I do agree with Dr. Bryan. I think $25,000 is low. The only other thing that a question that I had asked and wasn't answered, and if it could just be answered for me, I'd really appreciate it, which is I want what the fill rate was with ESS for this year.
Okay.
And what that looks like for next year, and what the delta is if we did that in-house, and what happens. I know we put targets in that contract. I know those targets were not met this year, so I want to know what that looks like going forward.
So do you want to go ahead? I did a little research on that, just for I can't give you a total yet, and I'm also need to caveat with I am not finance, so I do need to say that. But what I did look at was last week's invoice. Last week's invoice from ESS was $185,000. That is for Monday through Friday. And so it was $185,000. I did the work, and I compared it to, I took out their company bill rate for each of the positions, And if we were doing it on our own with a fill rate of 71%, which is what it was, it would have been 155. So it was about a 30,000 delta there. I will tell you the overall fill rate so far from February to May, I get weekly reports, it's been around 70%, which teachers being higher, there's been about a 76, 78% fill rate with teachers, and where our biggest discrepancy has been with our unfilled positions has been with paraprofessionals.
And you'll see again in this Friday's board notes, so every time that I include department updates, I'll always give you all that ESS fill rate and how we're doing on that too. So, yeah, thank y'all for that. And there is the penalty if they don't
There
make the
is.
fill rate. Paige, you want to?
I just
Yeah,
got
we'll work
an email just as we were sitting here that they issued a credit memo for both months.
Yeah.
When we're looking at the benefits considerations of option 1 and option 2, option 1, can you remind me, because I didn't pull it up and I should have, the survey results, where did that fall under the surveys that we did to teachers? And I know that was only
I believe it was second.
second. Okay.
It was second. Pay was first.
And I wanted to, and then the bereavement leave days, I would really love to know on both of those area districts.
Okay.
Which we're doing some comparisons with some other districts, but I'd also like to see the bereavement leave, and I guess I could go do that myself from all the other, unless you have it.
We'll be happy to look that up
If
and
you
get that
have
to you.
that, because I have even heard from some neighboring districts, some discrepancies in how the wording is stated and stuff. And so if we're going to move down that road, even with Dr. Bonner's suggestion of using the bank, then I really would want to see how that is worded. And then, once again, the job market update with those specialized fields. Would also like to, and I try to be out there and see all the news, and follow other districts. But if other districts have made adjustments, if we could be made aware of those too when we're bringing those discussions back, it helps us, because I think that it creates a different landscape for us in our consideration.
Yeah, some of those positions, and I can provide more follow-up information as we're kind of studying trends in other districts about those roles, are at about 94%.
Correct.
I think, of the market. And while that sounds pretty good when it's so competitive to get these kind of positions, that puts you at a challenge. So we're kind of watching it right now, watching what other districts are doing, and if we're not able to fill some of these jobs, I'll be definitely bringing it back before you all.
Well, in my looking at other districts, even for the diagnosticians and the speech therapists and those people, it looks like some of our area districts are doing some kind of stipend pays over the years, and to bring them up to market. And I know that those are out there, and
We'll be happy to research and get you that information.
okay, yeah, I'd be very interested in knowing if there's specialized
And then
formulas for those fields.
Absolutely, and as we followed the compensation plans that have been passed since ours in other districts, some of those things are being added.
Yeah.
So we'll be happy to add that, to get that information to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lasan?
I would actually like to see us do both of these, the benefits, the leave days. I'd like to for sure do the bereavement.
Okay.
And I would also like to increase the local days. I think that, I don't know, just growing up, I know my mom, she was a teacher for many years, and she had she had 10 total leave days.
Right.
I remember that.
Right.
And so, I don't know, I'd like to see us do both of those. I'm less interested in the retention payments. We've done that. I think we've given them a pretty substantial raise, and I'd like to see these leave days. I think that's almost something that we could do that's a little less to the bottom line, but would offer a substantial goodwill gesture, I suppose, for lack of a better term, on our part. And I also would like, if whatever you have found that would help raise the, tough to fill positions to where they need to be, then I think we need to do that as well. So we've got to stay competitive. So that's really my only input.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hassett?
Thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely.
I do love the idea of the bereavement leave, so I think that's very helpful in a time when they need it. And I have been agreeing with the local leave days after y'all have surveyed teachers. The retention payment was the third. So I still hear from teachers that local leave days would be helpful, especially with the last shenanigans, if they could take a day just for decompression. I think they need it these days. And I still love the stipend idea. I'd love, since you're researching districts,
Okay, I'll be happy to.
I'd love to know who in the area, and then also, could you also find out who in the other same-size districts as us, some of the, who they might be doing the, and if the board isn't wanting to do $1,000, could we potentially even do a $500? Can we do something else? Because all of our teachers work incredibly hard, especially when also have special ed requirements and the gobs of paperwork, but teachers who are in Title I campuses are stressed even further with the requirements. So I think that would be helpful, and trying to make sure that our positions are of market, especially since we have a nurse in every campus. We want to make sure that we're able to attract those as necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hassett. Thank you, Melissa, for the presentation. So a couple things, and one, I want to go back to just to make a placeholder, Ms. Maloney. I would like to talk about campus allocations at some point, maybe even just for my edification, but we can summarize that for the board as well. I'd just like to look at, I get and appreciate that there's a formula for allocating money to a campus. When we talked about the $1,000 stipend for certain campuses, Dr. Rapp, I think you even had, did you have that in your presentation today? Yeah, that I get concerned about incentivizing teachers to go to certain campuses because I'm not sure that they're there because, and then what happens? So they get $1,000 more, which is real money, and we're going to draw them off of other, I just, that one kind of, I struggle a little bit. And I'm not taking a position, I'm just struggling. But as it relates to the allocation, maybe understanding what are nuances in allocations. For example, are there special considerations where a campus might get more allocations outside of title dollars and that type of thing, and how that would happen, et cetera? Or if there were options for us to do that, because those could be budgetary considerations. So, Melissa, thank you for yours. I did have the question about ESS. I think anything that we can see, and Dr. Rapp, it sounds like we're going to do it. What we see the fill rate, I think we talked about this in November, December timeframe. Just see what those fill rates are, and I appreciate you bringing up the penalty, or somebody brought up the penalty. But 71% it's better than what we were talking about back then, but it's not hugely different. And I would also be interested, just anecdotally, we had some early transition issues around, subs that, they had to re-interview. Maybe you guys have some thoughts on that at some regular presentation of how that's going, just from an operational relationship. And if that shouldn't be done publicly, then there's no need to present it back to us. But I'd just be curious about that, because I do think that the question of, is this something that we could solve for ourselves? And so I look at things like, I see a Plano at $238 a day for a long-term sub. Comparatively, that's a lot of money. If I was looking for a long-term sub gig, I'd be going to Plano, right? And we're really not even up in the middle of this. We're there, but we're in the lower percentile. So just, again, just some thoughts rolling around. As it relates to page, it's 27 and 28 or page 14 in the smaller document. I'm looking at this, and I've always thought we put more into benefits for a district employee contribution, but I'm looking at this slide 27, district contribution per employee, as a comparison to below, which I think is the same thing, and we do 326, or is that the employee's contribution?
That's what we pay.
Okay, and then Denton does 260s, that's less, right? So there's only one district that does more than us, which is Frisco. Other than that, we're all kind of within $10, $20, $30 range, right? So it's we do provide more, but it's not substantially more, but it's, you know, enough where a premium for eye care or something else could be $20 a paycheck, and that's offsets that. So I get that. So I think I understand that. Long-term sub issue, I think we addressed. Addressed that. Local days. I don't know if Dr. Bonner said this, but this is the thing that I get concerned about with this. First of all, bereavement, I would be all for that. I don't know if it's $25,000, right? But even if it's $100,000, let's say. You know, most of you know that there's a fella I talk to every day in my life. And I got to tell you, if I worked for a company where I got 3 days, I mean, it's a decision for me of keeping that job or not, right? And I wouldn't keep the job. 3 days is not going to cover the transition. So I'm all for, if the current bereavement was 3 days, I'm all for expanding that, because that's you know, that's just different than the other days we're talking about, local days. The reason I'm tentative on local days is because when the lack of usage of total days. So you quantified bereavement days to 50 employees use them, and you know, in this, there's a total number of local days, local and state days that are put together in the district amongst all of our employees. And I bet if you look at that, there's a lot of days that don't go used, right? And so I get that the 1.3 million is probably looking at putting substitutes in and that type of thing. That's where that money's coming from. And so this solution of using the bank doesn't necessarily solve, it's not really different. So in other words, I can get 3 more days and take them and contribute to the 1.2 million. I can use days in the bank and it's still going to contribute to the 1.2 million. Basically, right? But the issue is the bank exists for a reason. And it really does force someone to think about it. And I know many of you as employees have contributed to the bank, right? And so it just seems to me that we have a mechanism today for employees to take advantage of that. And whether, I don't know how you guys set that up on the financials, right? If you've got employees with local days, do you encumber those in the financials? And if so, then my comparison of, well, it's just the same if they get the days given to them versus use the bank goes away, because you're already encumbering funds for the bank. And so that's what I struggle with in that area. I may not be articulating it well, but I'm just not sure we should just come out with the days yet. Honestly, if we were going to spend $1.2 million, I'd like to see us look at some type of $250 or $500 bonus for employees, doing something direct like that. And I know that in the sequence of the survey, you know, and what did you say number 2 was the local days? You know, it's interesting. We all talk to people. I've not found anybody that I've talked to that said, yeah, I'd rather take local days versus cash. Most of the people I talk to don't take all their days, right? So I'm just struggling with that one, just
I understand that.
For the record. And then I think everything else you covered. I just want to look at page 15. Oh, here's a question. A long-term sub, I was talking to a long-term sub on Sunday at church, and they don't fall under ESS, right? So what's the transition to that? Like they come in, they're subbing, like they're ESS employees. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the difference, it's a permanent sub versus long-term sub, so I'll let Melissa clarify. between the
Okay.
two.
I believe what you're talking about is a permanent sub position, and that's a full-time employee of the district, so they don't fall under ESS. So their rate is, we've established a set rate for them, but they're guaranteed 187 days worth of work. They come to school every day. Think of it as a building-based sub, maybe a better name, or a floater. So
Yeah.
they go to work, and they may be a para one day, office one day, teacher one day. Long-term sub goes through ESS.
Okay, so the person I'm thinking, and I'm not trying to solve for this person,
That's
just
okay.
it raised a question for me. They would be a floater,
Okay.
I think, doing multiple jobs. Then it begs the question, because I know that person at one point was certified not that long ago, why would they not just become a teacher?
Great question.
Would that be either on them, or
Yeah.
there may
It's
be
on
something
them.
I'm not aware of?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And definitely, as we look at the reducing down the number of permanent subs, if they're certified and let's say they're not going to have that permanent sub job next school year, they're an ideal candidate to go into an open position. And we hope they would do that, but there's all kinds of different personal reasons why people.
Okay.
And we've
decide not
addressed
to.
that, like when we did talk about the right size staffing with permanent subs, we shared with principals the different opportunities that if employees still wanted to work, and if they were certified, the first thing would be, oh my gosh, please, talk to them about continuing their certification, being a teacher. Several of them have done that. I can tell you from where I sit, I watched the recommendations come in, and the resignations, but the recommendations, I watched them come in, and we've hired several of our permanent subs. And if they're not certified, we've talked to them about the different programs we're doing right now to become certified, as well as opportunities to work in our paraprofessional positions. We've also seen that as well. I will tell you that a lot of times those that are certified just don't want to be a teacher. Like, they're not ready to get back in that classroom every day. They're doing this permanent sub role because they're still back with kids, but they don't have the responsibilities and things that they would have as a certified teacher. That's what I find in my
Okay,
conversation.
that's a good, and so again, just this kind of for my edification, so there's a benefit of someone that's a certified teacher but wants to be a permanent sub.
Absolutely.
The benefit to a campus leader and to the employee is that they don't have to be fixed to a classroom. In other words, if they have kind of some multidimensional capabilities they bring to the table, especially if they're an alt cert that came from a professional environment, they may want the versatility of a permanent sub would give them versatility, right? They could do this for a couple days and then go do this, where if they're an employee, they're probably going to be attached to
A classroom.
a classroom.
position
Okay, all right,
in which
great.
they're certified.
Thank you very much, Melissa.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I just wanted you to clarify that the right sizing is through attrition,
Yes.
just to make sure.
Yes, it is.
Just, yeah.
It is.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Sells,
And that just reminds me, and I just wanted to say kudos for the permanent sub positions, because several of us were at Lily Jackson this week with water play, which, by the way, going to the car wash was so fun. But it was so much fun. But in having conversations while I was there, first of all, Ms. Gwen relayed her thankfulness for the district putting in the permanent sub positions, and then introduced me to one of those permanent sub positions who is going in as a full-time employee next year. And I don't know who was more gracious and thankful, the employee or Ms. Gwen, but just to see it in action and to see that shift into a full-time and filling a position that's very much needed, especially because they will be getting more units next year. And I just wanted to say kudos to everybody around the table, because that was a wise and smart move, and we're seeing it now come into benefit for the district and ultimately for our students. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Rapp?
Just a couple of quick final notes. We've obviously got some homework items to follow back up with you all with as well, and I feel like we have a good sense, especially about the bereavement leave and that idea around the table. On the campus allocations, and this came up from Ms. Hassett in one of our one-on-ones as well, and we had not included information before even about the dollar amount for different campuses and the additional weighting, Mr. Miller, to your question, that a campus can get with bilingual, economically disadvantaged, special education, that kind of thing. So we do want to continue to provide more information and detail to you about those individual campus allocations. We thought today was just a good start with how do we calculate those in the first place. So we just appreciate, I appreciate all the work that many people have done on the presentation today, and we'll be back in front of you in June, of course, with follow-ups and other information.
And we're getting ready to close, right? Yeah. So I guess if anybody feels strongly about any of the options, and particularly put forward by HR, maybe communicate with superintendent, and you guys can process that appropriately. And so, thank you very much. If there's no further business, the meeting is adjourned. The time is 1:08 p.m.